Hi, I'm Femi OK. You're in the stream today. Part 2 of our discussion about the US President Donald Trump and the journalists who cover the White House. Now, it is no secret that both sides have a tumultuous relationship. So what is it like covering the White House when the president seems to prefer tweeting rather than any other form of communication? Joining us to talk about this, we have Yasmin Al-Amiri. She's a digital reporter with CGTN America. Heather Timmons, White House correspondent with Quartz. Siraj Hashmi is the assistant editor for Red Alert Politics. And joining remotely from Washington, D.C., Brian Callum. He's an executive editor for the Sentinel newspapers. Hello, everybody. Great to have you back for part 2. Let's set the scene. Let's play a few of the President Trump's. Let's say these are some of his greatest tweets. Have a look. So on Al Jazeera News, there was a story about President Trump tweeting about 2 cable TV hosts. It was pretty tough. It was pretty harsh, the language he used. Siraj, you were on it. Guess the president is sleeping on the Oval Office couch tonight. You are right in there. Are you enjoying the fact that the president describes himself as one of the world's greatest users of social media? When he met Prime Minister Modi, he said, you know, we are both great users of social media. Are you enjoying the fact that you can access some of his thought processes just by jumping on Twitter?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, under the Obama administration, we were only kind of learning it. We couldn't do this really with George W. Bush because Twitter was basically invented in 2006. So why would any president get on it then at that point in juncture? So the fact that Donald Trump has been able to get his message out as kind of unfiltered as he does, I enjoy it from the perspective that he seems to only open his mouth and insert his foot. And that really just from an objective standpoint, every president has a chance to control the message, and anytime that White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer or Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they try to instill a message, Trump just comes right in and undermines everything.
That's true. It is funny. I mean, it's like watching
conversational. Sorry, he's much more conversational, I think, and he is much more candid, whereas previous President Obama was much more buttoned up. He was much more academic. It's very reflective of the type of person he is.
And I think it is sort of a tap directly into his psyche. The stuff that's upsetting him just comes right out. And it's interesting as a sort of someone who's covering a person and wondering what's going to happen next. And you can almost say, like, oh, he's tweeting about how he's upset about the way the travel ban has been, put down. And you can sort of see the wheels turning. I would say separately from our job as journalists, as an American, watching your president do things like that is horrifying sometimes.
I mean, as an American, watching your president do things like that is not horrifying. What it really is watching the destruction of the Constitution of the United States take place before your very eyes, and you have absolutely no control over it. So you better laugh or cry because you're going to be here all week. I tell you how he's undermining the very foundations of the Republic. Every time he tweets, whether it's going after the press or whether it's going after an enemy or whether it's the tweet that he had against an anchor of a television show, it undermines not only the legitimacy of the president, but it undermines him as well.
I mean, you can make a case about the dignity of the president and the office that he's supposed to take, but it's not like Twitter was invented back in 1776 when the founders were like, oh, how do we make sure a president stops tweeting in the future and undermining the Constitution? Like that,
no, free speech is fine. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's worse than it's worse than theater. It's worse than all that. You couldn't anticipate that. And there are a few presidents we probably did. Andrew Jackson, maybe Buchanan, Taft. Some of those guys you probably didn't want to see on Twitter. But
But there are also a large contingent of people that were actually very much appreciative of having such a candid president and someone that they can access so easily. I mean,
I don't know if it's that many. I know that he won the presidency. I know he didn't win the popular vote, but I also know that more than, it was close to 50% of the people didn't vote. So it's really hard to know in this country where the feeling is, because people, and if you want to really go back to sources.
You judge by people who engage with him on Twitter. I mean, that's the only thing I'm saying is that those are not fabricated.
You're right. So you're right there.
If
absolutely.
in America was on Twitter, then that company would be doing a lot better.
Sure,
Twitter's got to love the president. I wonder if he has stock in it. My
exactly.
One thing that's amazing, though, is I don't know why, for President Trump, who has, he's very cognizant of how people think about him. I wonder why he opens himself up to that much trolling that he does already.
Here's Terry Johnson. Hold tight for a moment, Brian. Here's Terry Johnson. He says, it's not you, honey. He's talking about you, Brian, when you're saying that nobody's out to get the guy. We're just out to get answers from the president. And then Terry Johnson says that @real Donald Trump hangs himself every time he opens his mouth. We journalists are just the messenger. Yasmin,
we are the messengers.
You've actually met President Trump.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? What did you learn?
I mean, it was along the campaign trail, and it was very brief, so it wasn't like a sit down or anything like that. But I have met him, and I think what's important is that President Trump is a businessman. He is someone who a lot of people find to be very charismatic. I think he definitely has a way with certain people. But I will say, I mean, I said this before, that it's a very adversarial relationship with the press, which is fine because it's not like that hasn't happened before. I think honestly, the institution that we've set up in Washington is that there's an adversarial kind of relationship between the press and the presidency. But this is different. And along that same campaign trail, there was a lot of having people turn around at rallies and point fingers at the press, and that's when things become dangerous, and that's when things become the story is the press and the point of the press versus the actual policies. And so I think that's where we begin to get concerned.
So, Roger,
I think you have to go back to Larry Speakes. Go back to Ronald Reagan and Larry Speakes. Larry Speakes was Ronald Reagan's press secretary, and he said, "Don't tell us how to stage the news. We won't tell you how to cover it." Today, we have evolved to, don't tell us how to stage the news, and we'll tell you how to cover it. And that's the disappointing part of this president. And honestly, I've met a lot of sore losers in my life, but I've never met a sore winner. He wants to talk about the press. He wants to talk about Hillary Clinton. He wants to talk about Obama. They're not in office anymore. He is. We need to talk about him. Doesn't he think he's important enough to talk about?
To be completely fair, President Obama never does. In his first couple of years, President Obama railed against George W. Bush every chance he could, especially when he wasn't getting anything done. So that is just indicative of the president. I think that's
all of them.
Yes, that's indicative of all the presidents.
That's true.
I do find, and this is one of the funniest stories that I can recall from one of our White House reporters going to cover and actually interviewing Trump. I believe it was Sarah Westwood with the Washington Examiner. She had a sit-down interview with him, and I think it was either before or right after the interview, he handed her a copy of the Electoral College map that he won, with all the counties mapped in red and blue. Right. And whether you're a conservative or a liberal, that's just hilarious because he just will not let go of it. And this was only back in April.
Right. Let me take you to May. Guess. This is May the 8th, and some Time journalists were invited to the White House, and their interaction with the President of the United States is fascinating. Have a look.
My name is Zeke Miller. I'm a White House correspondent for Time magazine. On the evening of May 8th, I went to the White House to interview the President of the United States and have dinner with him, along with Time Washington Bureau Chief Michael Shearer and Time Managing Editor Nancy Gibbs. The president was obviously trying to put on a show for us. It was choreographed. There was a whole bunch of stage direction. It started in the Oval Office. He took us behind the scenes into his private study, a room where he does a lot of his work during the day. We then walked into the executive mansion. He rode in the elevator. We thought he was going to go to the first floor. Instead, he took us up to the second floor, the private residence. Secret Service doesn't allow most photographs in the residence levels, and we were essentially not permitted to take photos up there. I've interviewed the president 7, 8, 9 times. I've never seen him like that, and I've never seen the White House like that. And this is a sort of unusual level of access for anyone, reporters included. And it speaks to how the president likes to use the powers of pageantry to achieve his aims.
I think that's so interesting because besides being a businessman, the president really is a reality show star. And so much of this presidency seems like it is stage managed in such a fascinating way. You know, you have those meetings in the Rose Garden to announce the pulling out of the Paris climate change, and there's like a jazz band playing, and there's people
that was the best part of it.
I know, when they were playing Summertime.
Yeah, it was great.
I think
I enjoyed that. I went over and I talked to the guitarist for about 5 minutes.
They served lemonade to the journalists.
Yes.
Which, again,
all right, so let's set the scene, because you have access that we don't have
Right.
outside of the White House. So set the scene and explain why this was so
It's a beautiful
stage-managed.
summer day.
Right.
And everyone, the journalists are sort of piped out and they all sit in the back row. And then the guests start coming and they're all young, blonde, conservative looking, and most of them, and they're all sort of put into the front rows, and it seems like they're carefully managed in there, and we're all waiting and waiting, and the president is late because the president's always late. And finally you see Bannon come out and a few other people. And then the president comes out and he stands at the podium and the music stops and the sun shines through his hair. And he talks about pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And in his speech, he says several things that are completely untrue. You know, the US is the most environmentally friendly country in the world. I don't know, there's a couple other things. And everybody in the front rows claps. And we all go like this. And all the journalists look around like, I know that's not true. And so
no, they didn't just sit there and clap. They stood up and clapped.
Yes, so you got a standing ovation.
He got a standing ovation
for pulling out of this.
For pulling out of the climate accords and at the same time lying to us.
Right.
That was, and we sat there in those, and that was the irony of that day. I'll never forget was he's talking about pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords on the hottest, muggiest daggone day of the year in D.C.
But the journalists weren't clapping, so that needs to be
we're
said.
sitting there sweating.
The journalists weren't clapping, definitely not. No, it was all the people in the front row and the guests. And when he would sometimes say something that was so obviously factually incorrect, you could kind of see someone in the guest section kind of like raise an eyebrow. Yeah, and then just move on.
Yeah.
And so it's that part where it's like this beautifully staged managed thing and everyone claps for the president, but it's not.
Here's your dilemma. How do you deal with that? You are fact-checking. How much of your job is fact-checking? And then how do you share that with your audiences and your platform?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much like 90% of the job. Because
the conservative guy.
Well,
I mean, conservative,
and it's not just lies coming from.
Are you also fact-checking the president, Siraj?
Fact-checking the president, yes, because if we are being honest with ourselves, his policy to build a wall has not happened, despite him saying that it will happen.
And it can't happen.
And well, the logistics are still out in the open. I don't know what's going to happen.
No. I'll tell you.
The fact that we have
The fact that we have a fence. I want you to listen to this. I want you to look at this, okay? Between Del Rio, Texas and El Paso, Texas, there is a place called Big Bend, Texas. And that's the bend in the Rio Grande River. And you cannot put a wall there. You want to know why? Because it's like the Grand Canyon.
Right. No, I understand that infrastructurally, it just can't work all the way around.
It simply can't be done.
And they'd have to use eminent domain, and for a lot of the people who live on the border to basically build the wall. I understand that, but I'm just saying there are campaign promises that he's broken, and we've reported them because when it comes to the Senate health care bill, and then before that the House health care bill, the whole idea of repealing and replacing Obamacare, root and branch, which is what Republicans basically ran on for 7 to 8 years before Trump was elected.
With that term, too.
Exactly, root and branch. And the fact that they're coming out now with it, it's unfortunate that Trump is not as nuanced on policy because he is not there to basically call up lawmakers to negotiate with them and getting their votes to vote for a deal. Because
he has no influence on them right now.
Right now, I would say that many conservatives hate this bill. They view it as Obamacare light. It's a glossy cover to Obamacare, and they want nothing to do with it.
You're absolutely right.
Let me bring this thought up here from Amir. Amir on Twitter says, the presidency is already reduced to a bunch of tweets. Let's not do the same to journalism. Less bias, more composure. Has this unusual situation with a president who has very great access to just being able to tweet whatever he wants, whatever he's feeling, you know what he's feeling. Has that meant that some journalists have lost their composure?
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's fair to say that standing up for the job that you're doing makes you biased. I mean, I think that if you say that we're doing our job and we're trying our best and you defend your position, I don't think that's biased at all. I think that's actually maintaining the level of integrity of the work that you do. And I would hope that people who watch our work or read our work would respect us more for it. I think when you start to go after the integrity of the president or the character, and there become character assassinations, that's a different level that I think, frankly, nobody should stoop to. And I think it takes away from a more substantial conversation. But I think saying that I'm doing my job and I'm doing it at the best of my ability is not biased at all.
Right.
I have a feeling that this was aimed at me.
This is not fake news. This is actually something that's going on.
I agree.
You know, this is true. This is something that we need to pay attention to.
You have to.
Oh, go ahead.
You have to. And as much as this I feel is aimed a little bit at me, I must say that at the end of the day, you've got to be able to stand up and explain to people what it is that you are trying to do and to be honest about it. And at the end of the day, they'll decide. As I said to Sarah, you have the opportunity to buy another paper or to turn the channel if we get it wrong or you don't like what we read or what we produce. But we are not there to, there is no collusion. There's no, I was accused of being part of the Jewish Muslim liberal media cabal. Now, I never got that ring.
No one has invited me.
I've never been to a meeting, and I don't know what a cabal is. So there is this perception from some that maybe we huddle in darkness somewhere and go, okay, here's how we're going to go after the president.
I think this could be an opportunity maybe to educate the general public on what a journalist is, because I think maybe there hasn't been a conversation since the advent of social media and since social media has become a form of journalism. And so I think maybe this is the time to say most journalists, look, are credentialed. And there's a screening process. And maybe if you just have a Facebook page, that doesn't actually qualify you as a journalist.
Well, it can qualify you as a journalist. It may not qualify you as a good one. It may not qualify you as a reporter.
Yes.
I mean, in this country, with freedom of the press and the First Amendment, anyone could be a journalist. I'm not asking for special rights. I'm only asking for the rights that are granted to every citizen. But I have worked at this business for 35 years to hone my skills so that I know how to go after facts and I know how to present them. That's, you know, when somebody says, well, I could be a reporter, you all don't do anything special. It's like, would you walk into a brain surgeon and go, yeah, that's not the way to do it. I know what I'm doing. You move out of the way. But somehow they think they do. And there is a new breed of people who call themselves journalists that are activists. There was a woman that was in the press room. There are a couple of people who have been in that White House press room that were those who disrupted the Caesar play in New York City. And they're proud to call themselves reporters or journalists. You're not. You don't actively seek to become part of the story as a reporter. Unfortunately, I became part of the story. I didn't want to, but I didn't jump the stage and, you know, try to pull actors off a stage and go Viva la Trump or whatever. That's a completely different thing. And there are people who believe that you can be a reporter and actively, and, you know, Hunter Thompson is dead. The new journalism doesn't work. You can't be subjective in your reporting. You need to be a disinterested third-party observer. And that makes you a reporter.
What we need though, and this is more accountability on journalists. Journalists now more than ever have to play error-free baseball. So the fact that,
and we're not going to do it when we fire copy editors, and that goes. But you've hit on.
Brian, hold tight. I want to hear Siraj finish his thoughts.
What I'm saying is that the repercussions for journalists now are much higher than there is for the president and his administration. The fact that there are you can go with two competing narratives. You have the Trump administration saying one thing, and then you have journalists saying another thing. The Trump administration, you could say you know that they're lying. However, if you are caught in the lie, that's it. You're done. Your credibility is over. With the Trump administration, you can continue just carrying on.
And look what CNN
and that's the
did.
problem. That's why, and when Trump is able to use that whole term, fake news, that's indicative of all the mistakes that journalists have made along the way. And I'm not saying every journalist does this. There are a lot of still credible journalists who are covering the Trump administration.
We're never going to be able to play error-free baseball. The game isn't error-free baseball.
I'm just saying right now,
you can't do it.
Point in juncture,
you can't do it. There's no way. There's no way you can play error-free baseball.
But there is a way to do it. I think he makes a compelling point when you don't have to react to every single tweet
it's
because
almost,
then you get orange out.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
In
That's
terms of like anonymous sources, like with this CNN story, that was one anonymous source. Yeah. And I think the fact that they were trigger happy to write a full story on it.
That's
I understand.
Right. And Suraj, those people no longer work at CNN.
Right.
Heather, what did you want to say?
I was going to say, I don't think that it matters that much in America if you are playing error-free baseball or not. Sometimes there is a group of people, perhaps encouraged by the president to think everything is fake news, that are not going to believe what you write. Whether it's completely sourced on the record and there's not a single error in it and it's even copy edited, they're going to read it and they're going to go, that doesn't agree with what I have to say. That's negative about President Trump, and that is fake news. And I think this is the problem that really, with Trump calling everything fake news on Twitter.
Is this new for this year?
No, I mean, he's been calling things he didn't like fake
but
news
the public,
for a long time.
But your comment about some of the public will never believe, even if it is error-free journalism, they won't believe it.
I think there's probably were people, last year or 2 years, I think that there has been a growing divide.
Right.
But I think this year, and we're coming to a very important point.
Because the divisiveness of the campaign, I will say, is probably what started it. It created a vacuum where this could live, and it's only gotten ramped up. And I think the whole antagonism of the press became one of the talking points.
And we're coming to a point as a country where we're going to have to agree on something, and that is what happens with the Russia investigation. These things are going to keep on going, and then a report's going to come out that's going to be on the record from the FBI or the Senate Intelligence Committee, and it's going to say X. And whatever it says, we all have to agree that we have to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, we have to believe
Let
what
me share with
out.
you a couple of comments from people who are watching this show. So black physicists say, keep on the case like April D. Ryan with more and more fact-checking and card pulling, maybe an en masse walkout. April Ryan is one of the White House journalists. You often see her sitting there in the middle of the gaggle. And then Al-Haq Hassan says, keep on the good work. It's your right to disseminate information and our right to be well informed. What is continually fascinating is watching President Trump either on Twitter or actually in person being interviewed. This is a CBS interview. Have a look at how he reacted to that reporter called John Dickerson.
I just wanted to find out, though, you're the president of the United States. You said he was sick and bad because he had tapped you.
You can take any way. You can take it any way you want.
But I'm asking you because you don't want it to be fake news. I want to hear it from President Trump.
You don't have to ask me.
Why not?
Because I have my own opinions. You can have your own opinions.
But I want to know your opinions. You're the president of the United States.
It's enough. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's amazing. And we've seen the press, his press people recently say the president's tweets speak for themselves. And then we all sit in there and we go, but
what does it mean?
No, they don't. I have no idea what he's saying.
Kofifi. What does that mean?
Not even that. Not the misspelling, but other things that are,
Let's be honest, we've got 90 seconds left. Not long enough, because I've got some really interesting experiences that you've all been sharing. So thank you so much. Are you enjoying this?
Yes. Absolutely, 100%.
You're enjoying this?
This has never been a better time to be a journalist. Despite all despite everything that's coming against us, it is the best time to be a journalist.
Best time to be a journalist.
It's interesting and it's hard work and it's horrifying at the same time.
May you live in interesting times is the curse, and we're living in it.
Johnny,
I don't know if it's enjoyable, but I know that it is good for journalists. It only in so much as the demand is there and we must meet it. Enjoyable. Sometimes I feel like I walk into that press room and I walk out and have a desperate need to bathe.
Yasmin, are you having fun?
It keeps you on your toes, I will say that. I think it tests your journalism chops and, may every day be more interesting than the last.
Yasmin Al-Amiri, Heather Timmons, Suraj Hashmi, and Brian Karem. We are going to be following you on your platforms to see how you deal with this ongoing challenge of covering President Trump and the White House and the Trump administration. Thank you for being part of our roundtable today. Really appreciate it. And if you have more to say and you want to comment, we're always online at #AJStream. Thank you for watching this episode of The Stream. See you online. Take care, everybody.